There is a certain level of smugness in isometric team-based role-playing games such as Baldur's Gate, Tyranny, Planescape Torment, Pillars of Eternity, Icewind Dale. Those games just absolutely don't give a crap about modern kinks and standards in the industry, and they always get a warm welcome from the fanbase, which also don't really care about the modern developments, which are quite often very disappointing. You know, maybe the industry could learn a thing or two from isometric role-playing games, you know? Ever since the 90s, isometric role-playing games have been doing just fine without changing much of the formula. Even when you look at big developers, such as BioWare, it is hard to deny that the biggest titles they've released in the past 10 years or so have been Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect 1 to 3, which have all been very heavily influenced by isometric role-playing games from the 90s. It is after they tried to change the gameplay to a bit more MMOE, action-oriented, the series seemed to have gone downhill. And so in 2019, isometric role-playing games are still doing fine, with new titles being released every now and then for the fanbase to appreciate. One of those games is Torment Tides of Numenara, which came out in 2016, and I've been playing it on and off. And in today's video, I will explain why it took me so long to actually get into it. My name is Dan, and this is the review of Torment Tides of Numenara. Roll the intro. Torment Tides of Numenara is a team-based isometric role-playing game, which means that you'll be looking at your party of adventurers from a top-down perspective. The setting of the game is based on Monte Cook's Numenera universe, which is amazing but also pretty fucking confusing to a newcomer, but more on that later. You play as a body of the changing god, which means that a god used to reside in your body but for whatever reason has decided to abandon it. You set out to figure out your way around the world and learn that you are not the only cast-off. In fact, there are armies of other cast-offs, and nobody really knows who or why the changing god is going through so many bodies. And so, because the changing god is a god and nobody knows what's going on, the cast-offs started making assumptions on the meaning of life and the divine plan. This is how the religious divide between the cast-offs happened, that led to a full-blown war with the changing god loyalists on one side and the changing god haters on the other. Don't I just love religion? The main issue that concerns you is the dark force called Sorrow, which is trying to kill you since the very start of the game. You will play through the game basically trying to figure out what is going on with that. So far the setting isn't too complicated in concept, but it does get a bit more confusing when you will try to approach the NPCs in this game and their own stories. As you can imagine, an RPG will have its share of side quests, and this is where the game tries the player a bit. The starting location called Sago's Cliffs is built on post-apocalyptic ruins of multiple civilizations. Those are areas full of different architectural styles with various fantastical purposes. The NPC population is also very tricky to get your head around, as the streets are roaming with humans, mutants, robots, monsters, cyborgs, time travelers, and multidimensional beings. And this is where the game might confuse the player greatly. Once you start on the side quests, you will have to talk to these weird people in those funny places and learn about their lives and the problems to understand the tasks you are given. The first couple of side quests will have you a little bit lost in the settings, as you will have to start learning about all the little quirks of the world. Then you will move on to do more side quests, only to find out that each of these little stories has very little relevance to the last one, or the main quest in general. So every time you'll be talking to someone, you have to keep your mind open for more learning. Eventually, after being showered with all of these different cultures, fantasy and science fiction backgrounds, as well as philosophical concepts based on foreign foundations expressed in this game, you will start to realize that you can't relate to this world at all. The more NPCs I talked to and the more concepts and backgrounds were explained to me, the more confused I was about the overall setting of the game. Everything that's presented in this game is so fantastical that in result, Tides of Numenara becomes a story that is completely unrelatable, which has added a detrimental effect on the game, as it might result in players losing interest in the plot. The whole thing reminds me of this one time I went out with my normie friend to a normie club night in town. I didn't know anyone, the place looked weird and everyone looked like a mutant. Lots of women my mother's age were coming up to me to dance and feel my hair, so that was weird. And eventually, at some point in the night, my drink got spiked, so I just woke up at my friend's house next morning not knowing anything about what happened that night. However, don't take this as criticism for the universe. I actually really like the Numenera universe that I've experienced in this game, because it does provide a pretty open playground for all kinds of stories, and what little or large you get out of this is quite unique. unique, but it is a lot to take in for a first-comer. Torment prides itself in having deep morality system where you decide the fates of those around you, which in effect makes your companions like or dislike you. Their game is packed with situations where you can decide whether you want to fight your way through a scene or talk your way out, which normally leads to some sort of a reaction from other NPCs or your companions down the line. There are also other instances where, for example, you are trying to fish something out of a hole, but you need to have high enough speed as well as enough speed points for you to succeed. Overall, there are 3 main stat poles: might, speed, and intellect. Depending on your character class, you will invest your levels into different poles. There are 3 character classes: Glaive, which is the fighter type, Jack, which is the rogue type, and Nano, which is the mage type. As you level up, you can assign more edge points to each stat, which serve as action points, that can be used in dialogues or other instances where you need to perform a skill check. Those mighty can bash things open or intimidate people, those fast enough can perform dexterous activities or deceive, and intellectuals can do all kinds of smart stuff as well as persuade NPCs, so you end up with good choice of actions while dealing with problems. However, to succeed in any of those skill checks, you will need edge points, which boost your success chance. Eventually, you will need to replenish your edge with potions or by resting at camps spread around different locations. Should your attempts at diplomacy fail, you will have to undertake the combat system. Imagine a hybrid between XCOM or Wasteland 2 with Baldur's Gate, and that's what you get in Torment. You get 2 moves each turn for every party member, so let's say you run up to an enemy, that's your first move, and then you decide to attack, and that's your second move. After that, it goes to the next character. You may also perform a skill action which most often is based around stat boosts or stealth, or use an item such as a potion. While in combat, you will also have to perform might skill checks before each attack, which determines your accuracy and damage. If you run out of edge points by this point, you are kind of fucked as you will be forced to miss or deal little damage. Then again, the fights aren't really that difficult and they don't require any extraordinary strategies, thus they're more of a nuisance in the grand scheme of the game. They do, however, provide very welcome pace breakers to the game, as vast majority of your time with Torment will be spent in dialogue screens. If you decide to play this game, you have to be ready to read a lot. Nearly everything in Tides of Numenara is expressed through text. Thus, if you don't like reading, this game is definitely not for you. I do have some criticism for the dialogue sequences though, as every time I finish playing Torment, I struggle a bit with my vision after due to the display of text within the game. The dialogue text is displayed in white on a black background, which is a bit of an issue after long sessions, as the contrast between white and black can wear your eyes out, so every time I finish playing the game, I feel slightly blind. To sum it up, Torment Tides of Numenara is a role-playing game with a very deep setting and very complex concepts within it. So gamers should approach this title with an open mind and a very big attention to details just to make sure they don't miss anything within the story. The game requires a lot of reading and is a slow burner, so if you don't like to read and you get bored easily, this game is definitely not for you. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, then please leave a like. I release gaming videos every weekend, so if you want to see more content from me, do consider subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be seeing you again in the future. But for now, bye bye.